So before and after, before and after. But there's basically no saving this design. This is a fundamental catastrophic failure of an understanding of visual expression and art. Oh, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jerrel, I'm a normal human being, and I make video games for a living. I make commercial games and also free homebrew games as my way to basically just hang out with you guys and show you my appreciation for you supporting my games and spreading the word. So today I want to take a look at the character designs for the award-winning smash hit Concord. It's the most popular game on Steam and Xbox right now, and I wanted to explain to all of you from a character design perspective what is wrong with the character designs. Not just as characters for a video game, but artistically, in terms of the composition, the use of color, texture, the dynamic of tone. This video is not intended to criticize or demean the people who have done the work on this game, which is award-winning. I have no interest in offering any sort of criticism or attack. This video is for people who are getting into game development, who want to do character design, or who are people who are interested in designing characters and getting into art. So whether you're early in your career or you're in the middle of your artistic career, I hope this video will be here to help you. Later in the video, I will be sharing examples of my work as I put in a significant amount of thought, effort, and time into my own character designs. Not just trying to make characters look cool, but understanding compositionally what works well visually, how to visually communicate and express a character. Or if you're just interested in hearing about Concord and what makes the character so cool in Concord. Okay, with that out of the way, I don't know any of these characters. I haven't played Concord. You may have seen my video where I mentioned Concord a little bit. So I'm going to guess the names of these characters based on how they look. I don't know anything about them. And I've already prepared some modifications to the tonal balance and some usage of color with these characters. And so what's extremely important to consider when you are designing a character is the balance and distribution of tonal values. I will go ahead and turn this image black and white, and we'll have a look at the tonal values here. You can see we have our bright colors, our bright tones, our light tones here. The shirt is quite light, and then everything else is, this is quite gray, the hair is quite gray, the head's quite gray. And if you have a look at these values, it's really the light colored arms and the feet. They eventually just match the tonal value of the shirt, but this is quite flat tonally. Another important tool to use when you are checking your work and designing your character is to blur the image. And if your character is not interesting to look at when they are blurred, then they are not interesting to look at. It is a weak design. So I'm going to go ahead and back out of that. This is a version of the character that I've modified. So this is before, and this is after. And I only spent like 3 minutes on this. Some of these I may have made worse by butchering them because it felt impossible to try to salvage these designs. So I will go ahead and do the same process here. I'll turn that black and white, but you see now there's a greater separation of tonal values. You have the white here, which is quite obvious, and your attention is drawn to the whites. The shorts are now darker, so there is some dynamic between the rest of the character's tonal values. And then you have a gray here on the leggings, which are now more separate from everything else. So let's go ahead and bring that back to before. So this is before. Everything's quite flat, and the shirt just blows out a bit. And this is after. And you can see, just at a glance, this is flat and this is dynamic. In general, it's important to consider the dynamic of your character. It's what makes them interesting to look at, even if they are black and white. Say they were just a grayscale character. You would need to consider as an artist that not everyone perceives color the same way. So if you rely entirely on vibrant color contrasts or a cool color scheme without considering the tonal values, then you do not understand visual design yet. You do not yet understand visual expression, visual communication. So this is before and after. Logically, in the lore of the story, when you see this character next to the other characters, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I'm going to guess this character's name is Pixie. There we go. Let's go ahead and have a look at our next character, who I assume does not have a name. I can only assume, well, I can only ascertain from the value of detail in this character that this is a random NPC. So, you know, every shooter game has random mob creatures that come out, and then there's like, you know, dozens of them, and you just beat them up. So I assume this is that, because there are no unique identifying traits on this. This is so dull and flat in terms of tonal value as well. It's basically all just one tone the entire way through until you reach this red visor, which stands out because there's no cohesion anywhere on the character. So even if this were a trash mob design, it's extremely weak, and I'll explain why. But so what is important to keep in mind when designing a character is visual cohesion. What is the cohesion of those characters' visual elements? When you have something like this stark red that really contrasts everything else, you need to also feature that tonal value and that color somewhere else on the character so the character has cohesion. Right now it's a total visual mess. You have a little bit of this blue here, which is an odd tonal choice, considering that this breastplate and the rest of the bodysuit, it's sort of a flat gray and that's slightly brighter, but not by much. There's almost cohesion because you have a little blue tag there and you have blue soles on the shoes, but it's just not enough because the presence of those visual elements on the character are not nearly enough. Let's just go ahead and do our quick test here. We'll blur that, and it's not very interesting to look at. And if you turn that to grayscale, it's all one flat tone. There's absolutely no visual value. These are some modifications that I've made. So this is before and after. So you can see what I've done is I've lightened the bodysuit to build contrast, and I've adjusted the breastplate so that it matches the tonal value of the helmet, and I've changed the knee pads and the sort of padding on the feet here to try to match the helmet so there is visual cohesion. So you have this green here, here, and here, and that ties the character together. Unfortunately, there are no visual elements along the arm area, which would have really benefited. If there were some visual elements that used the same color as the visor, it would have been a much stronger design. So this is before, which is quite flat, and after. Let's go ahead and have a look at our next character. This, I do know this character's name. I've seen the trailers, I've listened to a lot of videos about the topic. This is One-Off, or One-Off. So this is a robot character, and the developers that I've seen discussing the game, they seem quite proud of this character. And I believe that they wrote a character with a unique personality. But from what I saw, it looks like the personality was just Baymax from Big Hero 6. So what's wrong with this design is, let's have a look at it. It's one flat tonal value again through the entire thing. And I just want to help you understand why people are so off-put by these designs, is they're not well considered, they're not well balanced. This is flat. There's no tonal value here. Now, I'm going to show you my modified version. So this is before, and this is after. Now, I may have pushed things a little too far because I was really desperate to try to make this interesting in some way, and it was a struggle to try and make this interesting. If anything, actually, instead of just making this darker, I would brighten that a little bit and maybe make it a little bit brown instead. So again, I only spent a few minutes on these. I have so much work to do with my own games, and I can't afford to fix someone else's product. So this is before and this is after. If we turn that grayscale, you can see what I've done is I've added at least some dynamic. I've darkened the joints, the shoulder pad, the torso, and the shin areas here to at least add some layering. So we have a different tonal value here. I think I've darkened the head as well. So you can see I've darkened that. The joints are darker. There's not a lot going on with the character design, so let's go ahead and move on to the next character here. So this is a nightmare design from a visual standpoint because of the use of colors and tonal values. Again, we're just going to do our quick check here, grayscale. It's flat the entire way through. One thing you also consider is the use of material. Now, if you focus on creating a good, strong character design, you understand the implications of different materials, such as fur, cloth, leather, wool, plastic, metal, etc. If you are just creating your character, say for example, in your development environment like Unreal, you are likely not going to consider those elements because you're lost in the sauce of how gorgeous Unreal looks. Unreal does all the heavy lifting for you, and that tends to lead developers to spend less time considering their decisions. So this was a struggle. This was so difficult to try to make it interesting in some way. I'm not touching any of the character skin tones. I don't want to raise any issues about blue washing or red washing characters, if that's something that Twitter cares about. I don't really use Twitter, and I do not care. So you can see that I've darkened the leather elements, and I've tried to make the leather elements more consistent across the board here. And what I've done is I've darkened the gloves. What I really would like to see is the gloves be basically the same material as the leather here, and have that provide some contrast. A design like this is really asking for the leather to be the darkest tone. I've kept that lighter, and I've tried to make the pants the medium tone, but because of his skin tone, because of the face there, this is such a difficult composition to balance. I tried to make the pants the same color and tone as his face, as in terms of composition, that is what this design is asking for. It is asking for this to be the same as that, but it was difficult to get that to look right because the leather, the tone of the leather was conflicting with that, and it was creating visual dissonance. Then what is going on here is this very light color makes it problematic as well, because if you turn that light, now this stands out quite a fair bit, a little too much. Then there's absolutely zero visual cohesion here. This, you look at it and you don't really understand what it is in relation to anything else he's wearing. It's so hodgepodge. This really needs to be the same visual language as this here. Whatever this scale plate is, this should have been on the knee area, but instead it's something else that I don't understand the design decisions here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next design here. And this one was frustrating because it was pretty close to being good. What this design really needed was more expression of yellow, because you have this is a nightmare now that I'm looking at it again, because you have a light mid-tone here, and you have a sort of a darker mid-tone here. I'm not going to go grayscale on everything. I'm just going to start speeding through these because it gets a little annoying having to explain the exact same problem. The exact same problems are being perpetrated again and again. The yellow that is the accent here needed to have presence somewhere else, somewhere here on the body or somewhere up here, but instead we have two conflicting primary tones, which is this light middle, a slightly darker middle, and then you have a yellow and this dark pink as two accent tones. So you have two primary tones and two accent tones that are not used in a manner that is well considered. So I've darkened the pants here, I've brightened the suit. This needed to be the same yellow as this. There isn't much you can do here. I can't even guess this character's name. Princess Gaia, I'm assuming, because that sounds like a budget riff on a Star Wars thing. Okay, this is Javier Bardem, the award-winning actor who is beloved. Everyone likes Javier Bardem. So this is Javier Bardem. This design is a nightmare because I don't understand the visual elements of this sort of, I came from laser tag and I lost one of my shoulder pads situation. The tonal values are not well distributed. You have very light tones here. You have the shoes. I'm going to start speeding through this. You have mushroom pants here that they look like they should be a darker tone because of the brown, but the orange shirt is actually a darker tone. So there is a tonal conflict despite the fact that this is supposed to be a lighter color. This is supposed to be a darker color. It's a nightmare having to look at how close these designs were to working. It's quite flat, and if you look, all your attention is drawn to the shoulder pad. There's no distribution of your direction of focus or your flow of visual focus. So I've darkened the pants a little bit, but there's nothing you could do really. Like, I've lightened the knee pads there. This is before, this is after. I tried to lighten the boots so that they matched the armor here. It's hard to salvage this. So before and after. This is where I started sweating during my adjustments. So I think this is the one everyone wants to see. This character is Tom Bombadil. And what's so wrong with his design, I'm not going to mention anything about the character. So what's so wrong is the vast majority of the character is taken up by a tone, a single flat tone, and that is this coat. There is no use of trim. Trim would be to have, borders with a different color that would complement that or accent that. There's no use of trim. It's all one flat tone that hasn't been used in an interesting way. And the tone is a lighter tone than the skin color, and it's very confusing visually looking at the coat and then the bodysuit underneath, because if you flatten that to grayscale, that's all the same tone, and they're lighter than the skin tone in a way that isn't different enough, but it's too close and too similar. You have a look at the boots, and this is all one flat dynamic. The shoulder pad should have had significant dynamic. It's so sad seeing a design like this because it doesn't have to be bad. You also have your orange glove, which should have been a strong accent. So when you're creating a character or design, you really need to have one primary color, one secondary color, and an accent color. If you have a tertiary color after the accent color, you can call it a secondary accent color. It needs to have less presence than the primary color, or it needs to have a very visually strong, equal balance. But it makes way more sense to have your primary, your secondary, your accent, and if you need a secondary accent, it needs to make sense and have less presence, or just as equal as the primary or the main accent. So this is before and after. Before and after. And this ended up like, I worked on this for a little bit longer than the other ones, and I didn't see a way to really fix this because the distribution of material and the way that they spread the dynamic was so ill-considered. I've adjusted this shoulder pad to try to match this breastplate, but here's the problem. The breastplate material isn't... It's so frustrating, it's disheartening to see this because I do not want to see people fail this badly. I've adjusted the boots so that they are the same color. I tried to create the sense of this blue accent on the orange, which is a nightmare already because they've used the primary color as an accent. This is chaos. It's visual chaos, and it's really frustrating to see this. So this is before, after. It's so frustrating because this design could have worked. I didn't want to spend too much time on this. What I've done was I tried to separate the sections using the visual element, so at least there's a darker blue and a lighter blue here, but this doesn't. Nothing about this works at all. This is one of the hardest designs I've ever had to break down and try to work with. Okay, this is... There are so few identifying traits on this character that I can only assume her name is Jennifer. So this is a nightmare tonally as well. The problem with all of these designs is they have not considered tonal dynamic and the distribution of tonal values. So you have... Just look at this. Where is your attention being drawn to? Would you say it's this bright spot here? Because if you have a look at this, the legs are calling your attention. So you are not, as an artist, you are not guiding the viewer into the important aspect of the character of where you want them to look. That is such a nightmare. And I tried to make it a little bit better, but it was so rough because of the materials that they chose, because of the tonal values. So I don't even want to talk about this one that much. I tried to separate this. Again, the same problem as Tom Bombadil is you have a large portion of the characters taken up by a single tonal value with zero detail to it. So it's almost unsalvageable. This is Star Prince. This is before and after. Before and after. What I tried to do, the problem, I keep saying that, take a shot every time I say the problem is. The problem is, again, it's so tonally flat. The bodysuit is basically the same as the skin tone, and if you blur that, your attention is basically focused on this bright strip here. There's one on the other side as well. I'm just going to breeze through this. It's really not fun being negative. I don't really enjoy that. But I'm approaching this the same way that I would approach if I was judging a student's work or a colleague's submission for work. I tried to create some contrast by brightening the knee pads and this sort of padded area. And I tried to adjust the boots so that the leather and the boots have a similar color to the vest. What this design is asking for is that, despite the fact that these are different materials, they need to be basically the same tone and the same color. The belt, the vest, and the shoes need to have visual cohesion. If you look at the original art, there is zero cohesion anywhere on this character, except for the fact that the belt and the boots are both leather and they have the same material and tone. So that barely counts because it's then conflicted by this life vest, I assume, which is telling the audience that he cannot swim. The fact that this is so bright, it stands out so much on the character and it doesn't balance out with anything else. This is so dull compared to the suit. It's so hard to look at. You're visually fighting what the character design is telling you to look at. So to me, visually, this makes a little more sense that your focus is evenly distributed between the tonal values there. But this is such a rough design to work with. And I think I've said that about, can somebody play the CinemaSins sound effect every time I say that? This is somehow worse than Tom Bombadil. I assume this character's name is Big Bertha. I don't enjoy having to be so critical and negative of these. So again, the problem here is the choice of the material and the color value and the logical visual elements. So logically, nothing makes sense in conjunction with each other. Like, what are these here? What is that? What material is it? What is it trying to say visually? What is this? What is that trying to say visually? Why is that just bright yellow out of nowhere, but then it doesn't occur anywhere else on the character? Why is the rubber a light? It's technically it's supposed to be a darker color, but it has a lighter tone. You have the black pants area, which is not dark enough, so it feels like a lighter tone than the material, despite the fact that it's a dark color. Do you see what I'm trying to explain? Is the color and the tonal values are all clashing and fighting each other. The gloves and the pants need to be darker, the joints need to be darker, and this is all one color and one tone, despite the fact that there's this sort of... What is this? What is this visually saying? Why is there suddenly this bright metallic strip here, and then it doesn't appear anywhere else on the character? So this is a visual... Oh man, I almost swore. This is just a nightmare. If someone had submitted this work to me, I would not accept it. There is no alternate reality in which I would have accepted this from a student or a coworker or a freelancer. I would not have accepted this design. I spent about actually 10 minutes trying to improve this in some way, but I couldn't. I tried to visually make it make sense. There's no way. So I was so frustrated with this design, I ended up just coloring over it and just making it I tried to push it into the so ugly that it's good realm, but it didn't work out. So there is one accent color here, and that is this pink. And so I tried to create a design where it uses that. They should have leaned into the accent color and used it as a secondary color, because there isn't a secondary color here. This needed to have more visual cohesion with whatever these... What is it that I'm looking at? It needed this material needed to be here. Whatever this was is on its own. This needed to be here. There needed to be separation of tonal values and colors. The boots could have been, so this looks like a nightmare. Even, I strongly dislike what this is, but at least there's separation of tonal dynamic, because now you have, at least the pants stand out a little bit. So this is before, and this is after. Before and after. And at least there is some separation of those values there. Let's go ahead and have a look at who I assume is called Cyborg 99. I actually kind of like this design. I like robots. I think robots are cool. Androids, cyborgs, I mean, they're all different, right? But robots are cool. I'm assuming I'm just going to call this Android 99. So this is so sad, because this could have been such a cool design. So what basically has gone so wrong with this is the character's skin tone is the same as the shirt, which is the same as the accent color, which means you only have the primary color. You have one primary color, which occupies basically the entirety of the character. You absolutely must not have your primary color occupy this much percentage of your character's visual presence, because now the secondary color, which is the shirt and the skin tone, basically become an accent color. So you have a primary color, no secondary color, and an accent color, but you also have this orange, which wants to be an accent color, but there's not enough presence of it to have visual cohesion. So you have orange out of nowhere, and it doesn't appear anywhere else. So this is before, this is after. What I've done is I've darkened the suit so that it has more contrast, more tonal dynamic range. So it is more different from the skin tone. Again, it's basically the same color as the skin tone. I have changed the purple so that is no longer the same color as the character's skin tone. It now serves as a proper accent color because it is actually a different color. And I've adjusted that because if it was orange, it would have stuck out so much that it is a nightmare. So this is a similar color to the suit, but actually a number of tones up in terms of the value there. So again, before and after. I kind of like this character. If I were to have to play as a character in this game, which I wouldn't, I would use Cyborg 99 or Android 99. This is a character that, this is, okay, by far, this is my favorite character design out of the lot. It is the most competent character design. It is the most well-considered, and it's still poorly made. It's ill-considered, but I like it. It's the best one. I think it's pretty rad. I can only assume her name is Captain Marvelous. Let's see here. So this is before and after. Before and after. So this upper area kind of works. This area here is what works the best, but what is good is the use of trim. This is something that's missing from all of the other characters. And when I say that, it's the gold trim that comes along the border here, and it provides a visual separation of the materials and the visual elements of the character. So the fact that they've implemented visual trim is so good. It should have been used at the ends of the cuffs here as well for more cohesion. And they do have that gold here, so this gets points for visual cohesion. It has the gold on the arm as well. So by far, this is the best character design. But what is so weak about it is the color, the tonal value they chose for the cape is wrong. It's a darker color and a lighter tone. You have the cape, which is gray, which is a lighter tone than this, but not enough. and it is basically the same tonal value and color as the hair. So visually, it blurs in with the hair, which is a nightmare. You don't want that. And all of a sudden, out of the whole character design, you have purple is your primary, brown is your secondary, and we can assume that gold and gray are the accent colors. And all of a sudden, you have blue. Why? Why would you do that? You already had a strong design. The solution here would have either used the gray or used the brown. So they just threw in another color. And this is what baffles me, is because these designs, they're not well considered enough to be considered competent designs, despite the fact that they are high fidelity. It is the fidelity of the characters that tricks you into thinking that they should be competent designs, but I'm not saying that as an insult. There are different levels to skill when it comes to creation. When it comes to any skill, you have awareness is the first stage, you have competence, and then you have mastery. Now, competence and mastery have a wide range. You can have low-level competence and high-level competence. You can have low-level mastery and high-level mastery. But awareness is where people run into trouble, because you can trick people into thinking that you have competence when your skill level is really only at awareness. So these designs are at the awareness level of character design and visual design. They are not yet at the competence level. And it is the fidelity, because we have such powerful tools that let people create stunning, visually stunning, high-fidelity characters without having the actual skill to use those tools to create competent designs. And that is the trouble that we're seeing here. That's the problem that we're running into. So here's before and after. Before and after. Let's have a look at some of the adjustments I've made here. So I've darkened the leather to a darker tone, and I've adjusted the boots. So the boots now are the same tonal value and color as the inside of the cape. I've darkened the gray of that cape so it no longer just blends in with the hair. And what I've done is I've actually separated the inner material from the outer material. Because of this trim, because of that visual expression, they are saying that this is a different material. This section out here is different from the inside. So if this is a different material, if this is a different visual element from the inside, then why are they the same color? Why are they the same tonal value? It's not well considered. So if you are saying that those are two different things, they should be different. So I've darkened the inside to make the character just more interesting to look at. This is my favorite design out of the lot. Okay, let's have a look at who I call Michelle Jackson. This is before and after. This is close to being a cool design. I like this. I like the idea of this design, but the execution isn't great. Again, the problem that the character designers of this, I don't know who designs the characters. I would like to see this whoever designed these characters, I would like to see their work on other games to see what their other characters are like, because I'm worried about seeing this work here. So again, the huge problem is that primary color occupies way too much space of the character, and there is absolutely zero visual information. There's no visual information. This is the same thing as putting a black sensor bar over a part of your character because you're hiding any visual information. This is flat. There's no detail. The trim, there's no... They seem like they added trim here, but it's the exact same tonal value and color as the rest of it. Then I don't know what they're trying to say with this life vest type puffiness here. So we have our primary color, our main color. We have the main color there, which is red. Now the secondary color would be the black, which is already... Here's the difficult thing about black and white for usage as identifying colors on your character, is if you use black or white as one of your identifying colors for your character, you have significantly reduced your potential for unique and interesting character visual expression, because black and white are very plain when it comes to colors. What is interesting are things like red, blue, yellow, green, purple, orange, gold, silver. Those things are interesting to look at. The black and white as visual elements usually serve the role of a palette cleanser or a neutral value. And if the majority of your character is taken up by a palette cleanser or a neutral value, it results in a very boring character. So your secondary color is black, and then you have this tan as your accent color, which is a good use of color. But the problem is they've then thrown purple in there very prominently. So you now have two accent colors in a way that doesn't make sense, because the purple is an accent color that is only distributed for the hair and the lips. And the problem is the accent for the purple is two different purples. We have purples on the lips and then purple on the hair that are two different values. And then you have a third accent, which is this magenta, and then a fourth accent with the gold. So this is a nightmare. This is a visual nightmare, having to look at this. As a gamer, I don't like it, but as an artist, it makes me uncomfortable as an artist, because it should not have turned out this way. So I've made some adjustments here. Let's go ahead and have a look at before and after. Before and after. And what I've done is I've taken that purple and I've tried to express it here on the gloves and on the knee pads, so I can distribute that accent color. And to me, I strongly prefer this, primarily because of using the purple on the knee pads. I've adjusted the coat so that it looks a bit shinier, so there's more expression when it comes to the lighting and the shadows, so it is visually more interesting to look at. So before and after. Before and after. This design, it could have been really cool. Let's have a look at, I assume this character, his name is Lucifer Bones, but that's his DJ name. He does DJ work on the weekends, and then during the week he does his whatever thing they do here. This is such a nightmare, and I think you might be able to turn this video into a drinking game based on the number of times that I said that this is a nightmare. But this is a nightmare, and I'm not joking. And the reason being is the primary color, again, takes up the vast majority of the character with zero visual information, and it is a tonal value and a color value that conflicts with his skin tone so badly that I cannot comprehend what the discussion was behind this character. This is the wrong color for this skin tone, for the accent color, and for these boots. It's a visual nightmare, and I don't want to have to keep harping on about it, but this was the wrong color. It's too light in terms of tonal value, and it's too bright as a color. Here's before, and here's after. So I've toned it down, I've made it a little bit more blue, and I've made it darker. I tried to follow the seam lines to create some dynamic on the coat, but this is basically unsalvageable. This is a visual nightmare. This coat is taking up so much space. They've used black as an accent color again, when they've used accent for black there, and I've already explained why using black as they've used black as a secondary color, not as an accent color, and I've already explained why that's not a good idea. You need to have a stronger understanding of visual expression if you are going to use black or white as a primary or secondary, and I do not see that level of competence in these designs. And again, I do not say that as an insult. I'm saying that as a qualitative descriptor of a skill level. It is not an insult. I wanted to see more contrast and saturation on these accent colors here. These accent colors here should have appeared on the coat. It should have been down along the trim. It should have been here. This is unsalvageable. This can't be helped. This is Lieutenant Tupperware. I can't even fathom. Take a shot. This is a visual nightmare. This is a disaster. This is a war zone. And it's frustrating. I'm personally frustrated now because I feel like I'm talking like a YouTuber, and I'm not a YouTuber, but it's the only way to express that this does not work. Never at any point during the conception of this character should someone have looked at this and said, this all works together. There are zero visual elements which have cohesion with any other part of the design. You have this Tupperware visual element, which doesn't correlate to anything else on her body. Her gloves don't have that Tupperware look. You have a breastplate with all kinds of tubes which logically don't say anything to us. You have this orange jumpsuit, which is plain, and the whole way through it occupies way too much space of the character. You have leather strips on the jumpsuit for no reason when those leather strips don't appear anywhere else except right down here, which some points for a little bit of visual cohesion. You have plastic knee pads with zippers on them. You have metal on the bottom of the shoes when metal doesn't appear anywhere else on the character. Why does she have a light teal on cream on orange? Then you have the black gloves, and the boots should have been the same material and color as that. So this kind of broke me. I did this one towards the end, and I was actually like buckling under the pressure of trying to make these character designs better. I've darkened the leather here. I've brightened the knee pads. I tried to make the knee pads and the steel caps on the boots, I tried to make them the same tone as the cream here. I tried to make the gloves brown leather to match those strips. So instead of having this sort of black rubber, I was hoping it would be brown leather like that. So before and after, before and after. But there's basically no saving this design. This is a fundamental catastrophic failure of an understanding of visual expression and art. This is... I couldn't even think of a character name for this, so I'm just going to call him Toad. This is Toad. This is before and after. Before and after. And basically, I just tried to darken the tone there so I can have some mid-tones here. I've already said it too many times here. This is so flat, and if you have a look at that, all the attention is drawn to the face and the shoulders, which is good, but then it pulls your attention away with this bit here. Your attention should be your attention for your character. You really want it to focus around here, and now your attention is pulled away here. Look, that's before and after. There's not that much you can do. So those are the characters. I'll share with you some of my work now. I'll show you the characters that I've created. Now, what is so frustrating in this situation is that when you create characters in a sci-fi setting, you have a free pass to make these characters as interesting, as outlandish, as wild. You have a free pass. You have access to basically the entire universe to make your characters interesting. There is nothing standing in your way when you have a sci-fi environment. There is nothing standing in your way from making your characters look eye-catching, interesting, charismatic, and cool. There's nothing standing in your way. You have everything is in your hand. You have every advantage to make your characters look incredible, to look interesting and engaging. And all of these designs have failed on every single aspect, despite having every single advantage. The ball was in their court. It wasn't just one ball. All of the balls were in their court, and they've dropped all of the balls simultaneously. And it's so frustrating to see that, because they had millions of dollars of funding and 8 years to create this. So I hope you understand what is so frustrating to me, because I take art very seriously. I take character design very seriously. So I'll go ahead and share with you some of my work now that I've created. Alright, so I'm going to share with you my project workspace for my game, Silver Falls Guardians and Metal Exterminators. The game is out now on Nintendo Switch on the eShop, and I'm going to share with you some of the character designs. So this is an example of a character design which is meant to be ugly, and that is for storytelling purposes. This character is a famous rock star, and much of his character arc is about him being arrogant and losing touch with the world and losing sight of just being a normal person. So he paid some famous European fashion designer to create for him a unique loud shirt that he can use when he's playing music, as his character is a famous rock star. And this was the ugliest design I could think of. The game and story is set in the 80s. So this is Silver Falls Guardians and Metal Exterminators. this was the ugliest design that I could consider, basically. I tried to do the 80s style hair and mustache and this sort of leathery black shirt that is cut way too low. It billows a little bit at the bottom, and then it comes to a tight V, and then a stupid collar and just a gaudy gold trim. That's an example of a design that is meant to be ugly on purpose. But if you have a look at the design elements here, you'll see that the tonal values are distributed thusly. You have the dark black, but the shoes match the dark black of that, and you have the blue here. The gold trim goes all throughout the black, so at least the black stays interesting, and it is designed to catch the light in such a way to where it's not just a plain black color. This is a very simple character design. This is a character named Shauna, and it's one of my favorite character designs in this. So let me explain the visual elements here. Is basically her primary color is meant to be this sort of lilac. So all of the characters in my Silver Falls series, the series takes place throughout various decades. So you might play as characters in the 70s, then you also get to spend time with them in the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. That means that all of my characters need to have a color scheme that is identifiable to them, so that even if you see them when they're 14 or they're in their 60s, you can quickly identify that character based on their colors, even though their clothes are different, and you can say, I know who that is, I know that character. So Shauna's primary color is this lilac with the light blue denim as the secondary color and yellow as the accent color. So I've designed the shirt so that that prominently is the lilac. Her headband also features that pattern with the lilac. You have the shoes, or the sandals, for visual cohesion that have the same color and tonal value as the shirt. They have the yellow accent on the sandals, the yellow accent as triangles on the pattern, and the yellow accent on the Walkman with the headphones there. Her lipstick is a little bit darker, but it's basically the same kind of lilac as the shirt. So this is a character that it's so simple in its design, and because she doesn't have sleeves and she didn't have any like bracelets or anything like that, it's a challenge to try to make a character interesting when you only have access to that part of their body. But that's all part of expressing that character. This character she's meant to be fashionable, but also outdoorsy, and doesn't try to show off, isn't gaudy. And that's why I wanted to keep that design simple. So what you are saying to the character with these designs is so important. This character's name is Bass Boulderfield. He just came from the disco, from dancing. So this, again, the game is set in the 80s. So this character's primary color in the modern days, the balance of the character's colors in Silver Falls vary from decade to decade, and it gives me a chance to visually express these characters have changed mentally and emotionally over the years as they experience different events. So his primary color is this kind of cool, deep magenta. But as an accent, I've used this material with a bit of stripe that is a lighter magenta. White was used heavily on this character, but that's because he's already visually so striking. You can see with the glasses, they are the blue accent that match the boots. Later on in the story, his primary color shifts to the magenta and the blue. But this is a character where if you do too much, so much can go wrong, and you need to consider when you've taken things too far. You can see that he's got some rings here. He's got just gold as a little bit of bling there, but he uses blue to have visual cohesion with the boots. He has blue earrings, and again, the glass is blue there. This is a character that has strong visual cohesion, despite the fact that he looks like he's committing a couple fashion crimes. That's beside the point. This is the workspace where I generally create the models and assets for my characters for my Silver Falls games. So if you are familiar with my games, you'll likely recognize quite a few of these characters, and this is the highest resolution detail that you would have seen them before. So I'm just going to quickly just try to hone in on a couple characters that bring the point home about visual cohesion and artistic expression the balance of tonal dynamic and making a character visually interesting. Now with the Silver Fall series, again, I do not have the benefit of a sci-fi setting, which means I'm quite restricted in what I can do to make my characters look visually interesting and have unique identifying traits, because these characters exist in the real world where they have to be grounded. The whole point of Silver Falls is that these should feel like real people who are grounded. Now, this is the same character. This is Base Boulderfield, who we've seen the model for. This is Base in the 80s and Base in the modern day. And you can see the way that I was able to express that in terms of his character is, whereas his colors used to be bright, vibrant, and punchy, you have this sort of vibrant, deep maroon and these blues. They're now toned down and faded, and they're more reserved a little bit. And that is to express a sense of this character having grown a bit older. I use the material of this sort of modern nylon and synthetic materials to give a sense that this character maybe is into technology and is a bit more modern, while other characters will use materials like leather. I use the same black tonal values there for his holster, for his belt. So you have layers to your materials. You have layers that are horizontal, and you have some vertical layers for your suspenders as well. You have your gold accent for the buckles, the clips, and also they match the glasses. He has a watch, and that matches the same black as that as well. Let's go ahead and have a look at a simpler character design, and this is as simple as you can get, but it still allows me to give characters unique identifying traits and to make them visually interesting, despite the fact that these are just normal, everyday, real-world characters. This character is blind, and he has a seeing eye dog. But I needed a way to make him look interesting, so I need to take into account the character's skin tone values and color values, so I can pick colors for the character that complement that and help him stand out. I've chosen this light tan as the secondary color, and the light tan on his shorts are actually the same light tan that you see on the laces. This blue here, the blue that you see on his boots, is the same blue as his shirt, and because the blue is actually a similar tonal value to his skin, I used a white trim so that it stands out, so that when the character is a bit far from the screen or is in movement, it's clear where that character is. So he hasn't starred as a protagonist yet. This is a character named Bjorna Hancock. She is the main character in the Wii U exclusive White Inside Its Umbra, which was the very last Wii U game to launch. So this is a character who raises horses, and part of her story is she's always had a problem with her weight, and she's just had to learn to deal with it, to learn to live with the bullying, and to focus on other positive aspects about her life. She doesn't relish or celebrate the fact that she has a little bit of weight. She doesn't, try to force her idea of beauty upon other people. There's no identity politics here. She doesn't try and force it on anyone. She's just accepted, this is who I am, and I'm trying to just be the best person I can be. I'm not going to criticize other people. And that is a big part of her character, is that she tends to be very sympathetic and understanding towards other people, because she knows what it's like to be criticized for the way that you look. And so she doesn't want to put that kind of criticism and critique on other people. So that is the reason why she is designed to look just like a normal person who has a little bit of a weight. And that's not a problem, because that is the reason why she is so sympathetic and that she is caring towards other characters. I used the trim of that, so a little brighter version of it. So you have white for the shirt, which is a neutral, to balance that out. And to make sure that it doesn't just blend in with her skin, I used a trim. You can see that this brown is her secondary color, but all along the shirt, she has a lighter toned version of her signature color, and that goes throughout the shirt to offer color there. Her gloves are the same material as her pants, which is a sort of leathery material. It gives her a sense of toughness, that she's very outdoorsy. She's got these dark brown boots, so this character has a well-balanced distribution of color and tone. The same kind of explanation for this character. I don't know why his eyes look so creepy. I don't know what Unity seems to have removed the texture map for that for some reason. You can see just the tonal values of having the brown leather there for visual cohesion. He has this primary, really nice, calm ocean blue shirt with the yellow accent there to separate that and give it some interest there, and then that light colored cream. Let's have a look at some other designs. This is one of my favorite asymmetrical designs. This is Brad here. And it's difficult when you have access to only a small portion of the character's body, but I wanted to focus on the textures or the shapes of this character to make it look interesting, and to make his shoes look interesting. I used the red and the white, but I darkened the red so that it didn't draw focus away from the red that I want you to pay attention to, which is up there. If you have a look at Bull Brandish here, you have his signature light blue, which he's always had since the 70s. You now have your brown leather overalls that occupy a significant amount of his body, but not too much, because it is then broken up by the darker blue, which is the same, basically the same color, but a darker version of that. And you have this light yellow to break up the darkness. If you had made that blue, then it would have been very plain. So he uses that yellow as an accent color, and the red basically matches his beard for cohesion there. You have the character Bran Steelhide. We saw his ugly, ugly shirt back in the 80s. And here is his modern day look, which is significantly more reserved and more toned down. You can see that his primary colors are black and blue. And I mentioned before that when you use black as one of your primary colors, you really limit yourself creatively on what you can express. But in this situation, that is a part of the character, is that he was a famous rock star, and he's at a point in his life where he's burned out and he just wants to have a quiet life. So that's why he prominently uses so much black. He uses this sort of lighter blue that catches light, so in context it stands out a bit from the shirt here, but he doesn't really use any accent colors, and that is to express the sense of growth that he's done being gaudy, and he's kind of learned a lesson. His boots are the same color and that leather material as the sleeves. The sleeves have a sort of a shiny leather look to them to help catch the light and break up the plainness, because the rest of his outfit is quite plain. Catching the light and being quite shiny breaks that up and makes it interesting to look at. And of course you have the visual cohesion with the shoes on the very bottom with black rubber, so you have the layering of your colors to make that visually cohesive and interesting to look at. Who else can we look at here? This is one of my favorite designs in all of my Silver Falls series, this character in particular. She's missing some of her visual design elements. She is meant to have a gold colored ornament in her hair that holds a feather. So this character is actually wheelchair bound. In the games, she sees what's going on with the characters, and she wants so badly to be able to participate and help when she sees things going on in Silver Falls, people dealing with cryptids and helping search for missing people. And she knows that she can't help because she's wheelchair bound, so she tries to find other ways where she can help. And that is this character. Her name is Kathleen. And what I really like is the pink that I've chosen for her here is a pink leather. So leather is a material that you associate with toughness, ruggedness, and the outdoors. So she's got the pink elements on her gloves. She has an armband and then the pink shoes to tie that all together in a cohesive way. There's very few characters that have patterned material, and especially with Kathleen here, she has this nice, sensitive, delicate birds with leaves there to help sell that sense of femininity to it. There is a sensitive side and a feminine side, despite the fact that she really wants to be outdoors and rugged. She's got light colored pants here, and the idea with her characters, I've avoided darker tones. You'll see characters have more dynamic contrast, and that helps visually communicate a sense of these people get to be more rounded, they get to have more experiences, they have more dynamic, punchy colors. But for Kathleen, I've specifically chosen colors where tonally it's all quite restricted, and that sells the idea. It communicates the idea of this person is restricted, this character is restricted because she is bound to the wheelchair. So that is the thought process that goes into creating these characters when choosing the materials and the color values and the tones for these characters. I just lastly want to take a look at this character here. This is one of my favorite designs that I've done. I really just like the color scheme that I've picked for this character. This character's name is Wilma, and she is quite outdoorsy. She's a hunter. She's one of the world's best archers, and she features quite a prominent use of fur here. See, her boots are blue. They have this sort of gray trim. She has leather pants to express a sense of ruggedness and toughness. As we go up along the design here, we have the same blue as the boots. They are on her armband. We have blue on the bracelets there. We have a kind of rope bracelets, a rope armband that stand out a little bit. You have leather on the pouch there that matches the pants. So it doesn't stand out too much, but it's a sense of visual cohesion. And you have this fur scarf that matches the tonal value of the pants. So there's visual cohesion. There are horizontal layers throughout the character. There's a pattern here to make her look interesting. And let's go ahead and zoom in and have a look at her earrings. So I've chosen earrings again that complement the rest of her outfit. They match the rest of her outfit. This is Wilma Wondersky in the 80s. Okay, now let's have a look at Wilma in the modern day. So we were just taking a look at Wilma in the 80s. Now this is Wilma in modern day. You can see her colors are a little toned down a little bit. They're not as punchy and vibrant, but she still has that distinct pattern, and she has earthy tones to express her connection to the outdoors. This design is more subdued, but still visually interesting to look at, especially in comparison to the other characters who some tend to wear plaid or shirts. And again, if you have a look here, I've got the brown sleeve cuff, which matches her holster, which matches the boots. And if you have a look, it matches the tone of her skin in a way where it exists in layers to give that character interesting layers. She has her blue scarf, which matches the blue pants, and it's just a simple design. I have to reconsider the character's layering in terms of her colors and dynamic tonal value because she now has white hair instead of black. And you can see that her earrings, still, she maintains the same fashion sense. They match her jacket. Okay, that's all that I wanted to share with you today. I hope that was interesting to you. So if you are interested in getting into visual design, character art, game development, I hope this has been useful to you. And I hope you've enjoyed watching the video and just hearing a little bit about the process that goes into designing characters in a well-considered manner where the visual expression and the artistic value are the primary focus of the character. Something that I noticed with Overwatch is there appears to have been absolutely no consideration when it comes to the ensemble of the characters. In all of my games that I create, especially with Silver Falls, I know exactly who the primary protagonists are, who the main characters are, and I know which characters are friends. They spend a lot of time with each other. So if you have a look at my Silver Falls games, you'll often see that the characters, their clothes don't clash with their friends. The characters who spend time around each other, they tend to wear outfits, colors that allow them to stand out. And that is because you need to consider the ensemble. If you have a character who's going to appear alongside 4 other characters, there's no reason for all of them to have red as the primary color, as their main color, because that means that it's going to be hard to tell those characters apart, and they're all going to blend and it will be a visual mess. So that is something that is important to consider. And it seems to me that Overwatch hasn't put in any kind of consideration for any visual expression, visual communication, or artistic philosophy when it comes to this design. So that's what I've got to say on the matter. Those are my thoughts on it. And I hope it has helped you understand why the character designs in Overwatch are so unappealing and they just don't feel good to look at. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to check out some of my other videos, they're on my YouTube channel. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm just a normal human being, and I make video games. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for coming to hang out. Okay.